Hello, brothers. Today, they discuss the recent challenges faced by the United States, the world's superpower. They have seen various analyses saying the US is doomed, while others claim it remains strong. As a concerned observer of international affairs, how should they view this issue? First, let's look at the recent data. In 2024, US expenditures reached $6.8 trillion. Revenue is only $4.9 trillion. The deficit is $1.8 trillion. What does this mean? This is equivalent to the US losing Australia's GDP in a year. How long can they sustain this? The national debt has surpassed $34 trillion. This means each American carries a burden of $100,000. Just paying interest in 2024 will require $1.1 trillion, which is about 22% of federal revenue. Imagine if 1/5 of their monthly income went to credit card interest. Would they feel comfortable living like that? Even scarier. By 2026, about $17 trillion in US debt will mature. Where will they find that money? They can only borrow new debt to pay off old debt. This is a classic case of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Eventually, it will collapse. While the US may be short on cash, the wealthy are not. Individuals like hedge fund managers control over $10 trillion in assets. The Rothschild family's wealth is astronomical. Combined, these super-rich may hold more than half of US GDP. Do they think these billionaires will willingly help the country? Don't be naive. Look at the policies of the previous administration. They cut taxes for the wealthy by $5 trillion and promoted a small government model. The US would rather see veterans homeless than raise taxes on the rich. This reminds them of Emperor Chongzhen of the Ming dynasty. He called on his ministers to donate money, but couldn't raise even 50,000 taels. After the city fell to Li Zicheng, through taxation and coercion, millions of taels were quickly gathered. Looking back at history, the US had two strong presidents, Roosevelt. They were not shy when facing economic crises and monopolies. When Theodore Roosevelt took office in 1901, he confronted 8 major trusts. Rockefeller controlled about 80% of oil. Morgan held financial power. And U.S. Steel monopolized 65% of the steel market. What did Theodore Roosevelt do? He pushed for the Sherman Antitrust Act and broke up Standard Oil. Of course, the capitalists were unhappy. In 1902, they incited a major miners' strike. What did Theodore Roosevelt do then? He sent 12,000 troops to the scene, calmed the workers and took over the mines. He also forced capitalists to adopt an 8-hour workday and raise wages by 10%. The capitalists were stunned, thinking they were there to be capitalists, not to implement communism. Franklin D. Roosevelt was even tougher after the Great Depression in 1929. The highest personal income tax rate soared from 25% to 63% by 1933 and reached 88% in 1943. In 1944, it hit 94%. The estate tax for the wealthy was as high as 77%. Those earning over $5 million kept only 6% after taxes. That was true wealth redistribution. Can one imagine Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos earning $10 billion? Only to pay $9.4 billion in taxes? This was the reality during the Roosevelt era. Why doesn't the current US government dare to tax the wealthy? Because the political system is held hostage by capital. Most Congress members rely on donations from the rich. The media is controlled by financial magnates. The judicial system increasingly favors the wealthy. Politicians claim to serve the people, but in reality, they serve their donors. In 2008, Wall Street nearly collapsed the global economy. What did the US government do? It used taxpayer money to bail out the banks. Too big to fail? It sounds absurd. This essentially tells Wall Street that profits are theirs, but losses are borne by everyone. The US has relied on military strength to dominate, but this advantage is rapidly fading. Let's look at recent events. The US shot down a balloon. It took 3 missiles, and it still wasn't certain they hit it. How awkward is that? Now, let's check the Middle East. A few young men from the Houthis in flip-flops can keep the US Navy busy in the Red Sea. The US carrier strike group struggled to destroy a few cheap drones. The cost comparison is ridiculous. How does the US military-industrial complex operate? Defense contractors import parts from China for a few dollars, package them, and sell them to the Pentagon for thousands. Congress members turn a blind eye. These contractors provide jobs and political donations in their districts. This is not military spending. This is a ladder to the middle class. Look at the current international landscape. Who can the United States still command? Countries openly refuse to produce oil. Turkey buys Russia's S-400. India is buying a lot of Russian oil. Even loyal ally Israel is starting to disobey. When Biden visited the Middle East, the Saudi king couldn't even be bothered to greet him. He just sent a minister to handle it. Think about it. 20 years ago, would a king do this? And recently, regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, can the US just stop it? Israel doesn't care at all. Look at the Russia-Ukraine war. What can the US do besides send weapons and money? Can it intervene directly? That's impossible. The American people don't want to die for Ukraine. What is the root of America's problems? It is an inevitable result of extreme capitalism. When the power of capital exceeds that of the government. When votes are swayed by money. When media is controlled by tycoons. Democracy becomes a puppet of money. If one wants to save America, the only way is to follow the two Roosevelts. That is to tax the super-rich, break up monopolies, and rebuild the middle class. But the question is, who has the courage and ability? Today's American politicians argue for ages over raising the minimum wage, let alone a 94% top tax rate. Historically, there are only two situations that can make a rich pay taxes willingly. The first is a strong president like Roosevelt. The second is social unrest like the French Revolution. Today, America seems to lack both. People feel there are no threats around the US. They might as well give up global hegemony and retreat. Becoming a wealthy family in North America is enough. As bystanders, one should not gloat. Nor should one blindly worship the issues in America. They provide a valuable lesson. That is, if a country allows wealth to concentrate excessively, if capital is allowed to override politics, it will ultimately lead to social division and national decline. America once brought many positive influences to the world, like technological innovation, management experience, and cultural exports. But it also brought financial plunder, military intervention, and cultural hegemony. One needs to view America's successes and failures dialectically. Ultimately, America's predicament reminds us that any country, no matter how strong, if it cannot solve internal fairness issues, if it cannot balance various interests, will inevitably decline. History has no permanent hegemons. America is no exception. If one finds this analysis valuable, be sure to follow. See you next time.